Chapter 1 1-14. The grief-stricken family, Kane, marries Luluwa, and they move away. When Luluwa heard Cain's words, she wept and went to call her father and mother, and told them how that Cain had killed his brother Abel. Then they all cried aloud, lifted their voices, slapped their faces, threw dust upon their heads, rent their garments asunder, and went out and came to the place where Abel was killed. And they found him lying on the earth, killed, and beasts around him, while they wept and cried because of this just one. Because of its purity, his body went forth a smell of sweet spices. And Adam carried him, his tears streaming down his face, and went to the cave of treasures, where he laid him and wound him up with sweet spices and myrrh. And Adam and Eve continued by his burial in great grief 140 days. Abel was 15.5 years old, and Cain 17.5 years. As for Cain, when the mourning for his brother was ended, he took his sister Luluwa and married her, without leave from his father and mother, for they could not keep him from her by reason of their heavy heart. He then went down to the bottom of the mountain, away from the garden, near to the place where he had killed his brother. And in that place were many fruit trees and forest trees. His sister bore him children, who in their turn began to multiply by degrees until they filled that place. But as for Adam and Eve, they came not together after Abel's funeral for 7 years. After this, however, Eve conceived, and while she was with child, Adam said to her, "Come, let us make an offering and offer it up unto God, and ask him to give us a fair child, in whom we may find comfort, and whom we may join in marriage to Abel's sister." Then they prepared an offering, brought it up to the altar, offered it before the Lord, and began to implore him to accept their offering and give them a good offspring. And God heard Adam and accepted his offering. Then they worshipped Adam, Eve, and their daughter, and came down to the cave of treasures, and placed a lamp in it, to burn by night and by day before the body of Abel. Then Adam and Eve continued fasting and praying until Eve's time came that she should be delivered, when she said to Adam, "I wish to go to the cave in the rock, to bring forth in it." And he said, "Go, and take with thee thy daughter to wait on thee, but I will remain in this cave of treasures before the body of my son Abel." Then Eve listened to Adam and went, she and her daughter. But Adam remained by himself in the cave of treasures. Chapter 2 1-9. A third son is born to Adam and Eve. And Eve brought forth a son perfectly beautiful in figure and countenance. His beauty was like that of his father Adam, yet more beautiful. Then Eve was comforted when she saw him, and remained 8 days in the cave. Then she sent her daughter unto Adam to tell him to come and see the child and name him. But the daughter stayed in his place by the body of her brother until Adam returned. So did she. But when Adam came and saw the child's good looks, his beauty, and his perfect figure, he rejoiced over him and was comforted for Abel. Then he named the child Seth, which means that God has heard my prayer and has delivered me out of my affliction. But it also means power and strength. Then after Adam had named the child, he returned to the cave of treasures, and his daughter went back to her mother. But Eve continued in her cave until 40 days were fulfilled, when she came to Adam and brought the child and her daughter with her. And they went to a river of water, where Adam and his daughter washed, because of their sorrow for Abel. But Eve and the babe washed for purification. Then they returned, took an offering, and went to the mountain and offered it up for the babe. And God accepted their offering, and sent his blessing upon them, and upon their son Seth, and they came back to the cave of treasures. As for Adam, he knew not again his wife Eve, all the days of his life. Neither was any more offspring born of them, but only those 5, Cain, Luluwa, Abel, Achillah, and Seth alone. But Seth waxed in stature and strength, and began to fast and pray fervently. Chapter 3 1-16. Satan appears as a beautiful woman tempting Adam, telling him he is still a youth. Spend thy youth in mirth and pleasure. Satan takes different forms. As for our father Adam, at the end of 7 years from the day he had been severed from his wife Eve, Satan envied him when he saw him thus separated from her, and strove to make him live with her again. Then Adam arose and went up above the cave of treasures, and continued to sleep there night by night. But as soon as it was light every day, he came down to the cave to pray there, and receive a blessing from it. But when it was evening, he went up on the roof of the cave, where he slept by himself, fearing lest Satan should overcome him. and he continued thus apart 39 days. Then Satan, the hater of all good, when he saw Adam thus alone, fasting and praying, appeared unto him in the form of a beautiful woman, who came and stood before him in the night of the 40th day, and said unto him, O Adam, from the time ye have dwelt in this cave, we have experienced great peace from you, and your prayers have reached us, and we have been comforted about you. But now, O Adam, that thou hast gone up over the roof of the cave to sleep, we have had doubts about thee, and a great sorrow has come upon us because of thy separation from Eve. Then again, when thou art on the roof of this cave, thy prayer is poured out, and thy heart wanders from side to side. But when thou wast in the cave, thy prayer was like fire gathered together. It came down to us, and thou didst find rest. Then I also grieved over thy children who are severed from thee, and my sorrow is great about the murder of thy son Abel. For he was righteous, and over a righteous man everyone will grieve. But I rejoiced over the birth of thy son Seth. Yet after a little while I sorrowed greatly over Eve, because she is my sister. When God sent a deep sleep over thee and drew her out of thy side, he brought me out with her. But he raised her by placing her with thee while he lowered me. I rejoiced over my sister for her being with thee. But God had made me a promise before, and said, Grieve not. When Adam has gone up on the roof of the cave of treasures, and is separated from Eve his wife, I will send thee to him. Thou shalt join thyself to him in marriage, and bear him 5 children, as Eve did bear him 5. And now, lo, God's promise to me is fulfilled, for it is he has sent me to thee for the wedding. If thou wed me, I shall bear thee finer and better children than those of Eve. Then again, thou art as yet but a youth, and not thy youth in this world in sorrow, but spend the days of thy youth in mirth and pleasure. For thy days are few, and thy trial is great. Be strong, end thy days in this world in rejoicing. I shall take pleasure in thee, and thou shalt rejoice with me in this wise, and without fear. Up, then, and fulfill the command of thy God. She then drew near to Adam and embraced him. But when Adam saw that she should overcome him, he prayed to God with a fervent heart to deliver him from her. Chapter 4, 1-9. Adam sees the devil in his true colors. Then God ordered Satan to show himself to Adam plainly in his own hideous form. But when Adam saw him, he feared and trembled at the sight of him. And God said to Adam, Look at this devil, and at his hideous look, and know that he is who made thee fall from brightness into darkness, from peace and rest to toil and misery. And look, O Adam, at him, who said of himself that he is God. Can God be black? Would God take the form of a woman? Is there any one stronger than God, and can he be overpowered? See, then, O Adam, and behold him bound in thy presence, in the air, unable to flee away. Therefore, I say unto thee, be not afraid of him. Henceforth take care, and beware of him in whatever he may do to thee. Then God drove Satan away from before Adam, whom he strengthened, and whose heart he comforted, saying to him, Go down to the cave of treasures, and separate not thyself from Eve. I will quell in you all animal lust. From that hour it left Adam and Eve, and they enjoyed rest by the commandment of God. But God did not the like to any one of Adam's seed, but only to Adam and Eve. Then Adam worshipped before the Lord, for having delivered him, and for having laid his passions. And he came down from above the cave, and dwelt with Eve as aforetime. This ended the 40 days of his separation from Eve. Chapter 5, 1-11. The devil paints a brilliant picture for Seth to feast his thoughts upon. As for Seth, when he was 7 years old, he knew good and evil, and was consistent in fasting and praying, and spent all his nights in entreating God for mercy and forgiveness. He also fasted when bringing up his offering every day, more than his father did, for he was of a fair countenance, like unto an angel of God. He also had a good heart, preserved the finest qualities of his soul, and for this reason he brought up his offering every day. And God was pleased with his offering. But he was also pleased with his purity. And he continued thus in doing the will of God and of his father and mother, until he was 7 years old. After that, as he was coming down from the altar, having ended his offering, Satan appeared unto him in the form of a beautiful angel, brilliant with light, with a staff of light in his hand, himself girt about with a girdle of light. He greeted Seth with a beautiful smile, and began to beguile him with fair words, saying to him, O Seth, why abidest thou in this mountain? For it is rough, full of stones and of sand, and of trees with no good fruit on them, a wilderness without habitations and without towns, no good place to dwell in. But all is heat, weariness, and trouble. He said further, But we dwell in beautiful places, in another world than this earth. Our world is one of light, and our condition is of the best. Our women are handsomer than any others, and I wish thee, O Seth, to wed one of them, because I see that thou art fair to look upon, and in this land there is not one woman good enough for thee. Besides, all those who live in this world are only 5 souls. But in our world there are very many men and many maidens, all more beautiful one than another. I wish, therefore, to remove thee hence, that thou mayest see my relations, and be wedded to whichever thou likest. Thou shalt then abide by me and be at peace. Thou shalt be filled with splendor and light, as we are. Thou shalt remain in our world, and rest from this world and the misery of it. Thou shalt never again feel faint and weary. Thou shalt never bring up an offering, nor sue for mercy. For thou shalt commit no more sin, nor be swayed by passions. And if thou wilt hearken to what I say, thou shalt wed one of my daughters. For with us it is no sin so to do. Neither is it reckoned animal lust. For in our world we have no God, but we all are gods. We all are of the light, heavenly, powerful, strong, and glorious. Chapter 6, 1-18. Seth's conscience helps him. He returns to Adam and Eve. When Seth heard these words, he was amazed, and inclined his heart to Satan's treacherous speech, and said to him, Saidst thou there is an other world created than this, and other creatures more beautiful than the creatures that are in this world? And Satan said, Yes, behold, thou hast heard me, but I will yet praise them and their ways in thy hearing. But Seth said to him, Thy speech has amazed me, and thy beautiful description of it all. Yet I cannot go with thee today, not until I have gone to my father Adam and to my mother Eve, and told them all thou hast said to me. Then if they give me leave to go with thee, I will come. Again Seth said, I am afraid of doing anything without my father's and mother's leave, lest I perish like my brother Kane, and like my father Adam, who transgressed the commandment of God. But behold, thou knowest this place. Come and meet me here tomorrow. When Satan heard this, he said to Seth, If thou tellest thy father Adam what I have told thee, he will not let thee come with me. But hearken to me, do not tell thy father and mother what I have said to thee, but come with me today to our world, where thou shalt see beautiful things, and enjoy thyself there, and revel this day among my children, beholding them and taking thy fill of mirth, and rejoice evermore. Then I shall bring thee back to this place tomorrow. But if thou wouldest rather abide with me, so be it. Then Seth answered, The spirit of my father and of my mother hangs on me, and if I hide from them one day, they will die, and God will hold me guilty of sinning against them. And except that they know I am come to this place to bring up to it my offering, they would not be separated from me 1 hour. Neither should I go to any other place, unless they let me. But they treat me most kindly, because I come back to them quickly. Then Satan said to him, What will happen to thee if thou hide thyself from them one night, and return to them at break of day? But Seth, when he saw how he kept on talking, and that he would not leave him, ran, and went up to the altar, and spread his hands unto God, and sought deliverance from him. Then God sent his word, and cursed Satan, who fled from him. But as for Seth, he had gone up to the altar, saying thus in his heart, The altar is the place of offering, and God is there. A divine fire shall consume it. So shall Satan be unable to hurt me, and shall not take me away thence. Then Seth came down from the altar, and went to his father and mother, whom he found in the way, longing to hear his voice, for he had tarried a while. He then began to tell them what had befallen him from Satan under the form of an angel. But when Adam heard his account, he kissed his face and warned him against that angel, telling him it was Satan who thus appeared to him. Then Adam took Seth, and they went to the cave of treasures and rejoiced therein. But from that day forth Adam and Eve never parted from him, to whatever place he might go, whether for his offering or for anything else. This sign happened to Seth when he was 9 years old. Chapter 7, 1-10. Seth marries Aklia. Adam lives to see grandchildren and great-grandchildren. When our father Adam saw that Seth was of a perfect heart, he wished him to marry, lest the enemy should appear to him another time and overcome him. So Adam said to his son Seth, I wish, O my son, that thou wed thy sister Aklia, Abel's sister, that she may bear thee children, who shall replenish the earth according to God's promise to us. Be not afraid, O my son, there is no disgrace in it. I wish thee to marry, from fear lest the enemy overcome thee. Seth, however, did not wish to marry, but in obedience to his father and mother, he said not a word. So Adam married him to Aklia, and he was 15 years old. But when he was 20 years of age, he begat a son, whom he called Enos, and then begat other children than him. Then Enos grew up, married, and begat Canaan. Canaan also grew up, married, and begat Mahalaleel. Those fathers were born during Adam's lifetime, and dwelt by the cave of treasures. Then were the days of Adam 930 years, and those of Mahalaleel 100. But Mahalaleel, when he was grown up, loved fasting, praying, and with hard labors, until the end of our father Adam's days drew near. Chapter 8, 1-20. Adam's remarkable last words. He predicts the flood. He exhorts his offspring to good. He reveals certain mysteries of life. When our father Adam saw that his end was near, he called his son Seth, who came to him in the cave of treasures, and he said unto him, O Seth, my son, bring me thy children and thy children's children, that I may shed my blessing on them ere I die. When Seth heard these words from his father Adam, he went from him, shed a flood of tears over his face, and gathered together his children and his children's children, and brought them to his father Adam. But when our father Adam saw them around him, he wept at having to be separated from them. And when they saw him weeping, they all wept together, and fell upon his face, saying, How shalt thou be severed from us, O our father? And how shall the earth receive thee, and hide thee from our eyes? Thus did they lament much, and in like words. Then our father Adam blessed them all, and said to Seth, after he had blessed them, O Seth, my son, thou knowest this world, that it is full of sorrow and of weariness, and thou knowest all that has come upon us. From our trials in it, I therefore command thee in these words, to keep innocency, to be pure and just, and trusting in God, and lean not to the discourses of Satan, nor to the apparitions in which he will show himself to thee. But keep the commandments that I give thee this day. Then give the same to thy son Enos, and let Enos give it to his son Canaan, and Canaan to his son Mahalaleel, so that this commandment abide firm among all your children. O Seth, my son, the moment I am dead, take ye my body, and wind it up with myrrh, aloes, and cassia, and leave me here in this cave of treasures, in which are all these tokens which God gave us from the garden. O my son, hereafter shall a flood come and overwhelm all creatures, and leave out only 8 souls. But, O my son, let those whom it will leave out from among your children at that time take my body with them out of this cave. And when they have taken it with them, let the oldest among them command his children to lay my body in a ship until the flood has been assuaged, and they come out of the ship. Then they shall take my body and lay it in the middle of the earth, shortly after they have been saved from the waters of the flood. For the place where my body shall be laid is the middle of the earth. God shall come from thence, and shall save all our kindred. But now, O Seth, my son, place thyself at the head of thy people. Tend them and watch over them in the fear of God, and lead them in the good way. Command them to fast unto God, and make them understand they ought not to hearken to Satan, lest he destroy them. Then, again, sever thy children and thy children's children from Cain's children. Do not let them ever mix with those, nor come near them either in their words or in their deeds. Then Adam let his blessing descend upon Seth, and upon his children, and upon all his children's children. He then turned to his son Seth, and to Eve his wife, and said to them, Preserve this gold, this incense, and this myrrh that God has given us for a sign, for in days that are coming, a flood will overwhelm the whole creation. But those who shall go into the ark shall take with them the gold, the incense, and the myrrh, together with my body, and will lay the gold, the incense, and the myrrh with my body in the midst of the earth. Then, after a long time, the city in which the gold, the incense, and the myrrh are found with my body shall be plundered. But when it is spoiled, the gold, the incense, and the myrrh shall be taken care of the spoil that is kept, and not of them shall perish until the word of God, made man, shall come, when kings shall take them, and shall offer to him gold in token of his being king, incense in token of his being God of heaven and earth, and myrrh in token of his passion. Gold also as a token of his overcoming Satan and all our foes, incense as a token that he will rise from the dead, and be exalted above things in heaven and things in the earth, and myrrh in token that he will drink bitter gall, and feel the pains of hell from Satan. And now, Seth, my son, behold, I have revealed unto thee hidden mysteries, which God had revealed unto me. Keep my commandment for thyself and for thy people. Chapter 9, 1-9. The death of Adam. When Adam had ended his commandment to Seth, his limbs were loosened, his hands and feet lost all power, his mouth became dumb, and his tongue ceased altogether to speak. He closed his eyes and gave up the ghost. But when his children saw that he was dead, they threw themselves over him, men and women, old and young, weeping. The death of Adam took place at the end of 930 years that he lived upon the earth, on the 15th day of Barmuday, after the reckoning of an epoch of the sun, at the 9th hour. It was on a Friday, the very day on which he was created, and on which he rested, and the hour at which he died was the same as that at which he came out of the garden. Then Seth wound him up well, and embalmed him with plenty of sweet spices, from sacred trees and from the holy mountain. And he laid his body on the eastern side of the inside of the cave, the side of the incense, and placed in front of him a lamp, stand kept burning. Then his children stood before him weeping and wailing over him the whole night, until break of day. Then Seth and his son Enos, and Canaan, the son of Enos, went out and took good offerings to present unto the Lord, and they came to the altar upon which Adam offered gifts to God, when he did offer. But Eve said to them, Wait until we have first asked God to accept our offering, and to keep by him the soul of Adam his servant, and to take it up to rest. And they all stood up and prayed. Chapter 10, 1-8. Adam was the first. And when they had ended their prayer, the word of God came and comforted them concerning their father Adam. After this, they offered their gifts for themselves and for their father. And when they had ended their offering, the word of God came to Seth, the eldest among them, saying unto him, O Seth, 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 3 times. As I was with thy father, so also shall I be with thee, until the fulfillment of the promise I made him, thy father, saying, I will send my word and save thee and thy seed. But as to thy father Adam, keep thou the commandment he gave thee, and sever thy seed from that of Cain thy brother. And God withdrew his word from Seth. Then Seth, Eve, and their children came down from the mountain to the cave of treasures. But Adam was the first whose soul died in the land of Eden, in the cave of treasures, for no one died before him, but his son Abel, who died murdered. Then all the children of Adam rose up, and wept over their father Adam, and made offerings to him 140 days. Chapter 11, 1-14. Seth becomes head of the most happy and just tribe of people who ever lived. After the death of Adam and of Eve, Seth severed his children and his children's children from Cain's children. Cain and his seed went down and dwelt westward, below the place where he had killed his brother Abel. But Seth and his children dwelt northwards upon the mountain of the cave of treasures, in order to be near to their father Adam. And Seth the elder, tall and good, with a fine soul, and of a strong mind, stood at the head of his people, and tended them in innocence, penitence, and meekness, and did not allow one of them to go down to Cain's children. But because of their own purity, they were named children of God, and they were with God instead of the hosts of angels who fell, for they continued in praises to God, and in singing psalms unto him, in their cave, the cave of treasures. Then Seth stood before the body of his father Adam, and of his mother Eve, and prayed night and day, and asked for mercy towards himself and his children, and that when he had some difficult dealing with a child, he would give him counsel. But Seth and his children did not like earthly work, but gave themselves to heavenly things, for they had no other thought than praises, doxologies, and psalms unto God. Therefore did they at all times hear the voices of angels, praising and glorifying God, from within the garden, or when they were sent by God on an errand, or when they were going up to heaven. For Seth and his children, by reason of their own purity, heard and saw those angels. Then, again, the garden was not far above them, but only some 15 spiritual cubits. Now 1 spiritual cubit answers to 3 cubits of man, altogether 45 cubits. Seth and his children dwelt on the mountain below the garden. They sowed not, neither did they reap. They wrought no food for the body, not even wheat, but only offerings. They ate of the fruit and of trees well flavored that grew on the mountain where they dwelt. Then Seth often fasted every 40 days, as did also his eldest children. For the family of Seth smelled the smell of the trees in the garden, when the wind blew that way. They were happy, innocent, without sudden fear. There was no jealousy, no evil action, no hatred among them. There was no animal passion. From no mouth among them went forth either foul words or curse, neither evil counsel nor fraud. For the men of that time never swore, but under hard circumstances, when men must swear, they swore by the blood of Abel the just. But they constrained their children and their women every day in the cave to fast and pray, and to worship the Most High God. They blessed themselves in the body of their father Adam, and anointed themselves with it. And they did so until the end of Seth drew near. Chapter 12, 1-16. Seth's family affairs. His death, the headship of Enos, how the outcast branch of Adam's family fared. Then Seth, the just, called his son Enos, and Canaan, son of Enos, and Mahalaleel, son of Canaan, and said unto them, as my end is near, I wish to build a roof over the altar on which gifts are offered. They hearkened to his commandment, and went out, all of them, both old and young, and worked hard at it, and built a beautiful roof over the altar. And Seth's thought, in so doing, was that a blessing should come upon his children on the mountain, and that he should present an offering for them before his death. Then when the building of the roof was completed, he commanded them to make offerings. They worked diligently at these, and brought them to Seth their father, who took them and offered them upon the altar, and prayed God to accept their offerings, to have mercy on the souls of his children, and to keep them from the hand of Satan. And God accepted his offering, and sent his blessing upon him and upon his children. And then God made a promise to Seth, saying, at the end of the great 5 days and a half, concerning which I have made a promise to thee and to thy father, I will send my word and save thee and thy seed. Then Seth and his children and his children's children met together and came down from the altar, and went to the cave of treasures, where they prayed and blessed themselves in the body of our father Adam, and anointed themselves with it. But Seth abode in the cave of treasures a few days, and then suffered, sufferings unto death. Then Enos, his first-born son, came to him, with Canaan, his son, and Mahalaleel, Canaan's son, and Jared, the son of Mahalaleel, and Enoch, Jared's son, with their wives and children, to receive a blessing from Seth. Then Seth prayed over them, and blessed them, and adjured them by the blood of Abel the just, saying, I beg of you, my children, not to let one of you go down from this holy and pure mountain. Make no fellowship with the children of Cain the murderer and the sinner, who killed his brother, for ye know, O my children, that we flee from him, and from all his sin with all our might, because he killed his brother Abel. After having said this, Seth blessed Enos, his first-born son, and commanded him habitually to minister in purity before the body of our father Adam all the days of his life. Then also to go at times to the altar which he Seth had built. And he commanded him to feed his people in righteousness, in judgment and purity all the days of his life. Then the limbs of Seth were loosened. His hands and feet lost all power. His mouth became dumb and unable to speak, and he gave up the ghost and died the day after his 912th year. On the 27th day of the month Abib, Enoch being then 20 years old, that they wound up careful the body of Seth, and embalmed him with sweet spices, and laid him in the cave treasures, on the right side our father Adam's body, and they mourned for him 40 days. They offered gifts for him as they had done for our father Adam. After the death of Seth, Enos rose at the head of his people, whom he fed in righteousness and judgment, as his father had commanded him. But by the time Enos was 820 years old, Cain had a large progeny. For they married frequently, being given to animal lusts, until the land below the mountain was filled with them. Chapter 13, 1-18. Among the children of Cain there was much robbery, murder, and sin. In those days lived Lamech the blind, who was of the sons of Cain. He had a son whose name was Atton, and they two had much cattle. But Lamech was in the habit of sending them to feed with a young shepherd who tended them, and who, when coming home in the evening, wept before his grandfather, and before his father Atton and his mother Hazanah, and said to them, "As for me, I cannot feed those cattle alone, lest one rob me of some of them, or kill me for the sake of them." For among the children of Cain there was much robbery, murder, and sin. Then Lamech pitied him, and he said, "Truly, he when alone might be overpowered by the men of this place." So Lamech arose, took a bow he had kept ever since he was a youth, ere he became blind, and he took large arrows and smooth stones, and a sling which he had, and went to the field with the young shepherd, and placed himself behind the cattle, while the young shepherd watched the cattle. Thus did Lamech many days. Meanwhile Cain, ever since God had cast him off, and had cursed him with trembling and terror, could neither settle nor find rest in any one place, but wandered from place to place. In his wanderings he came to Lamech's wives, and asked them about him. They said to him, "He is in the field with the cattle." Then Lamech shot at Cain with his arrow and hit him in his side. And Lamech struck him with a stone from his sling that fell upon his face, and knocked out both his eyes. Then Cain fell at once and died. Then Lamech and the young shepherd came up to him, and found him lying on the ground. And the young shepherd said to him, "It is Cain our grandfather, whom thou hast killed, O my lord." Then was Lamech sorry for it. And from the bitterness of his regret he clapped his hands together, and struck with his flap palm the head of the youth, who fell as if dead, but Lamech thought it was a feint. So he took up a stone and smote him, and smashed his head until he died. Chapter 14, 1-4. Time, like an ever-rolling stream, bears away another generation of men. When Enos was 900 years old, all the children of Seth and of Canaan and his firstborn, with their wives and children, gathered around him, asking for a blessing from him. He then prayed over them and blessed them, and adjured them by the blood of Abel the just, saying to them, "Let not one of your children go down from this holy mountain, and let them make no fellowship with the children of Cain the murderer." Then Enos called his son Canaan, and said to him, "See, O my son, and set thy heart on thy people, and establish them in righteousness and in innocence, and stand ministering before the body of our father Adam all the days of thy life." After this Enos entered into rest, aged 980, 5 years, and Canaan wound him up, and laid him in the cave of treasures on the left of his father Adam, and made offerings for him after the custom of his fathers. Chapter 15, 1-4. The offspring of Adam continued to keep the cave of treasures as a family shrine. After the death of Enos, Canaan stood at the head of his people in righteousness and innocence, as his father had commanded him. He also continued to minister before the body of Adam, inside the cave of treasures. Then when he had lived 910 years, suffering and affliction came upon him. And when he was about to enter into rest, all the fathers with their wives and children came to him, and he blessed them, and adjured them by the blood of Abel, the just, saying to them, "Let not one among you go down from this holy mountain, and make no fellowship with the children of Cain the murderer." Mahalaleel, his first-born son, received this commandment from his father, who blessed him and died. Then Mahalaleel embalmed him with sweet spices, and laid him in the cave of treasures with his fathers, and they made offerings for him after the custom of their fathers. Chapter 16. 1 to 12, the good branch of the family, is still afraid of the children of Cain. Then Mahalaleel stood over his people, and fed them in righteousness and innocence, and watched them to see they held no intercourse with the children of Cain. He also continued in the cave of treasures, praying and ministering before the body of our father Adam, asking God for mercy on himself and on his people, until he was 870 years old, when he fell sick. Then all his children gathered unto him, to see him, and to ask for his blessing on them all, ere he left this world. Then Mahalaleel arose and sat on his bed, his tears streaming down his face, and he called his eldest son Jared, who came to him. He then kissed his face, and said to him, O Jared, my son, I adjure thee by him who made heaven and earth, to watch over thy people, and to feed them in righteousness and in innocence, and not to let one of them go down from this holy mountain to the children of Cain, lest he perish with them. Hear, O my son, hereafter there shall come a great destruction upon this earth on account of them. God will be angry with the world, and will destroy them with waters. But I also know that thy children will not hearken to thee, and that they will go down from this mountain, and hold intercourse with the children of Cain, and that they shall perish with them. O my son, teach them and watch over them, that no guilt attach to thee on their account. Mahalaleel said, moreover, to his son Jared, When I die, embalm my body, and lay it in the cave of treasures, by the bodies of my fathers. Then stand thou by my body, and pray to God, and take care of them, and fulfill thy ministry before them, until thou enterest into rest thyself. Mahalaleel then blessed all his children, and then lay down on his bed, and entered into rest like his fathers. But when Jared saw that his father Mahalaleel was dead, he wept and sorrowed, and embraced and kissed his hands and his feet, and so did all his children. And his children embalmed him carefully, and laid him by the bodies of his fathers. Then they arose and mourned for him 40 days. Chapter 17. 1 to 48. Jared turns martinet. He is lured away to the land of Cain, where he sees many voluptuous sights. Jared barely escapes with a clean heart. Then Jared kept his father's commandment, and arose like a lion over his people. He fed them in righteousness and innocence, and commanded them to do nothing without his counsel. For he was afraid concerning them, lest they should go to the children of Cain. Wherefore did he give them orders repeatedly, and continued to do so until the end of the 485th year of his life. At the end of these said years, there came unto him this sign. As Jared was standing like a lion before the bodies of his fathers, praying and warning his people, Satan envied him, and wrought a beautiful apparition, because Jared would not let his children do aught without his counsel. Satan then appeared to him with 30 men of his hosts, in the form of handsome men, Satan himself being the elder and tallest among them, with a fine beard. They stood at the mouth of the cave, and called out Jared from within it. He came out to them, and found them looking like fine men, full of light and of great beauty. He wondered at their beauty and at their looks, and thought within himself whether they might not be of the children of Cain. He said also in his heart, As the children of Cain cannot come up to the height of this mountain, and none of them is so handsome as these appear to be, and among these men there is not one of my kindred, they must be strangers. Then Jared and they exchanged a greeting, and he said to the elder among them, O my father, explain to me the wonder that is in thee, and tell me who these are with thee, for they look to me like strange men. Then the elder began to weep, and the rest wept with him. And he said to Jared, I am Adam whom God made first, and this is Abel my son, who was killed by his brother Cain, into whose heart Satan put to murder him. Then this is my son Seth, whom I asked of the Lord, who gave him to me, to comfort me instead of Abel. Then this one is my son Enos, son of Seth, and that other one is Canaan, son of Enos, and that other one is Mahalaleel, son of Canaan, thy father. But Jared remained wondering at their appearance, and at the speech of the elder to him. Then the elder said to him, Marvel not, O my son, we live in the land north of the garden, which God created before the world. He would not let us live there, but placed us inside the garden, below which ye are now dwelling. But after that I transgressed, he made me come out of it, and I was left to dwell in this cave. Great and sore troubles came upon me, and when my death drew near, I commanded my son Seth to tend his people well. And this my commandment is to be handed from one to another unto the end of the generations to come. But, O Jared, my son, we live in beautiful regions, while you live here in misery, as this thy father Mahalaleel informed me, telling me that a great flood will come and overwhelm the whole earth. Therefore, O my son, fearing for your sakes, I rose and took my children with me, and came hither for us to visit thee and thy children. But I found thee standing in this cave weeping, and thy children scattered about this mountain in the heat and in misery. But, O my son, as we missed our way and came as far as this, we found other men below this mountain, who inhabit a beautiful country, full of trees and of fruits, and of all manner of verdure. It is like a garden. So that when we found them, we thought they were you, until thy father Mahalaleel told me they were no such thing. Now therefore, O my son, hearken to my counsel, and go down to them, thou and thy children. Ye will rest from all this suffering in which ye are. But if thou wilt not go down to them, then arise, take thy children, and come with us to our garden. Ye shall live in our beautiful land, and ye shall rest from all this trouble, which thou and thy children are now bearing. But Jared, when he heard this discourse from the elder, wondered, and went hither and thither, but at that moment he found not one of his children. Then he answered and said to the elder, Why have you hidden yourselves until this day? And the elder replied, If thy father had not told us, we should not have known it. Then Jared believed his words were true. So that elder said to Jared, Wherefore didst thou turn about so and so? And he said, I was seeking one of my children, to tell him about my going with you, and about their coming down to those about whom thou hast spoken to me. When the elder heard Jared's intention, he said to him, Let alone that purpose at present, and come with us. Thou shalt see our country. If the land in which we dwell pleases thee, we and thou shall return hither, and take thy family with us. But if our country does not please thee, thou shalt come back to thine own place. And the elder urged Jared to go before one of his children came to counsel him otherwise. Jared then came out of the cave and went with them and among them, and they comforted him until they came to the top of the mountain of the sons of Cain. Then said the elder to one of his companions, We have forgotten something by the mouth of the cave, and that is the chosen garment we had brought to clothe Jared without. He then said to one of them, Go back, thou someone, and we will wait for thee here until thou come back. Then will we clothe Jared, and he shall be like us, good, handsome, and fit to come with us into our country. Then that one went back. But when he was a short distance off, the elder called to him, and said to him, Tarry thou until I come up and speak to thee. Then he stood still, and the elder went up to him, and said to him, One thing we forgot at the cave, it is this, to put out the lamp that burns inside it, above the bodies that are therein. Then come back to us, quick. That one went, and the elder came back to his fellows, and to Jared. And they came down from the mountain, and Jared with them. And they stayed by a fountain of water, near the houses of the children of Kane, and waited for their companion, until he brought the garment for Jared. He then, who went back to the cave, put out the lamp, and came to them, and brought a phantom with him, and showed it them. And when Jared saw it, he wondered at the beauty and grace thereof, and rejoiced in his heart, believing it was all true. But while they were staying there, 3 of them went into houses of the sons of Cain, and said to them, Bring us today some food by the fountain of water for us and our companions to eat. But when the sons of Cain saw them, they wondered at them, and thought, These are beautiful to look at, and such as we never saw before. So they rose and came with them to the fountain of water, to see their companions. They found them so very handsome, that they cried aloud about their places for others to gather together, and come and look at these beautiful beings. Then they gathered around them both men and women. Then the elders said to them, We are strangers in your land. Bring us some good food and drink, you and your women, to refresh ourselves with you. When those men heard these words of the elder, every one of Cain's sons brought his wife, and another brought his daughter, and so many women came to them, every one addressing Jared either for himself or for his wife, all alike. But when Jared saw what they did, his very soul wrenched itself from them. Neither would he taste of their food or of their drink. The elder saw him as he wrenched himself from them, and said to him, Be not sad. I am the great elder, as thou shalt see me do. Do thyself in like manner. Then he spread his hands and took one of the women, and 5 of his companions did the same before Jared, that he should do as they did. But when Jared saw them working infamy, he wept, and said in his mind, My fathers never did the like. He then spread his hands and prayed with a fervent heart, and with much weeping, and entreated God to deliver him from their hands. No sooner did Jared begin to pray than the elder fled with his companions, for they could not abide in a place of prayer. Then Jared turned round, but could not see them, but found himself standing in the midst of the children of Cain. He then wept and said, O God, destroy me not with this race, concerning which my fathers have warned me. For now, O my Lord God, I was thinking that those who appeared unto me were my fathers, but I have found them out to be devils, who allured me by this beautiful apparition, until I believed them. But now I ask thee, O God, to deliver me from this race, among whom I am now staying, as thou didst deliver me from those devils. Send thy angel to draw me out of the midst of them, for I have not myself power to escape from among them. When Jared had ended his prayer, God sent his angel in the midst of them, who took Jared and set him upon the mountain, and showed him the way, gave him counsel, and then departed from him. Chapter 20. 1-37. Ravishing music. Strong drink loosed among the sons of Cain. They don colorful clothing. The children of Seth look on with longing eyes. They revolt from wise counsel. They descend the mountain into the valley of iniquity. They cannot ascend the mountain again. After Cain had gone down to the land of dark soil, and his children had multiplied therein, there was one of them, whose name was Jenon, son of Lamech the blind, who slew Cain. But as to this Jenon, Satan came into him in his childhood, and he made sundry trumpets and horns, and string instruments, cymbals and psalteries, and lyres and harps and flutes, and he played on them at all times and at every hour. And when he played on them, Satan came into them, so that from among them were heard beautiful and sweet sounds that ravished the heart. Then he gathered companies upon companies to play on them. And when they played, it pleased well the children of Cain, who inflamed themselves with sin among themselves, and burnt as with fire, while Satan inflamed their hearts, one with another, and increased lust among them. Satan also taught Jenon to bring strong drink out of corn. And this Jenon used to bring together companies upon companies in drink houses, and brought into their hands all manner of fruits and flowers, and they drank together. Thus did this Jenon multiply sin exceedingly. He also acted with pride, and taught the children of Cain to commit all manner of the grossest wickedness, which they knew not, and put them up to manifold doings which they knew not before. Then Satan, when he saw that they yielded to Jenon and hearkened to him in everything he told them, rejoiced greatly, increased Jenon's understanding, until he took iron, and with it made weapons of war. Then when they were drunk, hatred and murder increased among them. One man used violence against another to teach him evil, taking his children and defiling them before him. And when men saw they were overcome, and saw others that were not overpowered, those who were beaten came to Jenon, took refuge with him, and he made them his confederates. Then sin increased among them greatly, until a man married his own sister, or daughter, or mother, and others, or the daughter of his father's sister, so that there was no more distinction of relationship, and they no longer knew what is iniquity, but did wickedly, and the earth was defiled with sin, and they angered God the judge, who had created them. But Jenon gathered together companies upon companies, that played on horns and on all the other instruments we have already mentioned, at the foot of the holy mountain. And they did so in order that the children of Seth, who were on the holy mountain, should hear it. But when the children of Seth heard the noise, they wondered and came by companies, and stood on the top of the mountain to look at those below. And they did thus a whole year. When, at the end of that year, Jenon saw that they were being won over to him little by little, Satan entered into him, and taught him to make dyeing, stuffs for garments of divers patterns, and made him understand how to dye crimson and purple, and what not. And the sons of Cain who wrought all this, and shone in beauty and gorgeous apparel, gathered together at the foot of the mountain in splendor, with horns and gorgeous dresses, and horse races, committing all manner of abominations. Meanwhile, the children of Seth, who were on the holy mountain, prayed and praised God, in the place of the hosts of angels who had fallen, wherefore God had called them angels, because he rejoiced over them greatly. But after this, They no longer kept his commandment, nor held by the promise he had made to their fathers, but they relaxed from their fasting and praying, and from the counsel of Jared their father. And they kept on gathering together on the top of the mountain, to look upon the children of Cain, from morning until evening, and upon what they did, upon their beautiful dresses and ornaments. Then the children of Cain looked up from below, and saw the children of Seth standing in troops on the top of the mountain, and they called to them to come down to them. But the children of Seth said to them from above, We don't know the way. Then Jenon, the son of Lamech, heard them say they did not know the way, and he bethought himself how he might bring them down. Then Satan appeared to him by night, saying, There is no way for them to come down from the mountain on which they dwell. But when they come tomorrow, say to them, Come ye to the western side of the mountain. There you will find the way of a stream of water, that comes down to the foot of the mountain between two hills. Come down that way to us. Then when it was day, Jenon blew the horns and beat the drums below the mountain, as he was wont. The children of Seth heard it, and came as they used to do. Then Jenon said to them from down below, Go to the western side of the mountain. There you will find the way to come down. But when the children of Seth heard these words from him, they went back into the cave to Jared, to tell him all they had heard. Then when Jared heard it, he was grieved, for he knew that they would transgress his counsel. After this 100 men of the children of Seth gathered together, and said among themselves, Come, let us go down to the children of Cain, and see what they do, and enjoy ourselves with them. But when Jared heard this of the 100 men, his very soul was moved, and his heart was grieved. He then arose with great fervor, and stood in the midst of them, and adjured them by the blood of Abel the just, Let not one of you go down from this holy and pure mountain, in which our fathers have ordered us to dwell. But when Jared saw that they did not receive his words, he said unto them, O my good and innocent and holy children, know that when once you go down from this holy mountain, God will not allow you to return again to it. He again adjured them, saying, I adjure by the death of our father Adam, and by the blood of Abel, of Seth, of Enos, of Canaan, and of Mahalaleel, to hearken to me, and not to go down from this holy mountain. For the moment you leave it, you will be reft of life and of mercy, and you shall no longer be called children of God, but children of the devil. But they would not hearken to his words. Enoch at that time was already grown up, and in his zeal for God he arose and said, Hear me, O ye sons of Seth, small and great, when ye transgress the commandment of our fathers, and go down from this holy mountain, ye shall not come up hither again forever. But they rose up against Enoch, and would not hearken to his words, but went down from the holy mountain. And when they looked at the daughters of Cain, at their beautiful figures, and at their hands and feet dyed with color, and tattooed in ornaments on their faces, the fire of sin was kindled in them. Then Satan made them look most beautiful before the sons of Seth, as he also made the sons of Seth appear of the fairest in the eyes of the daughters of Cain, so that the daughters of Cain lusted after the sons of Seth like ravenous beasts, and the sons of Seth after the daughters of Cain, until they committed abomination with them. But after they had thus fallen into this defilement, they returned by the way they had come, and tried to ascend the holy mountain. But they could not, because the stones of that holy mountain were of fire flashing before them, by reason of which they could not go up again. And God was angry with them, and repented of them, because they had come down from glory, and had thereby lost or forsaken their own purity or innocence, and were fallen into the defilement of sin. Then God sent his word to Jared, saying, These thy children, whom thou didst call my children, behold, they have transgressed my commandment, and have gone down to the abode of perdition and of sin. Send a messenger to those that are left, that they may not go down and be lost. Then Jared wept before the Lord, and asked of him mercy and forgiveness. But he wished that his soul might depart from his body, rather than hear these words from God about the going down of his children from the holy mountain. But he followed God's order, and preached unto them not to go down from that holy mountain, and not to hold intercourse with the children of Cain. But they heeded not his message, and would not obey his counsel. Chapter 21, 1-16. Jared dies in sorrow for his sons who had gone astray, a prediction of the flood. After this another company gathered together, and they went to look after their brethren, but they perished as well as they. And so it was, company after company, until only a few of them were left. Then Jared sickened from grief, and his sickness was such that the day of his death drew near. Then he called Enoch his eldest son, and Methuselah Enoch's son, and Lamech the son of Methuselah, and Noah the son of Lamech. And when they were come to him, he prayed over them, and blessed them, and said to them, Ye are righteous, innocent sons. Go ye not down from this holy mountain. For behold, your children and your children's children have gone down from this holy mountain, and have estranged themselves from this holy mountain, through their abominable lust and transgression of God's commandment. But I know, through the power of God, that he will not leave you on this holy mountain, because your children have transgressed his commandment and that of our fathers, which we had received from them. But, O my sons, God will take you to a strange land, and ye never shall again return to behold with your eyes this garden and this holy mountain. Therefore, O my sons, set your hearts on your own selves, and keep the commandment of God which is with you. And when you go from this holy mountain into a strange land which ye know not, take with you the body of our father Adam, and with it these 3 precious gifts and offerings, namely the gold, the incense, and the myrrh, and let them be in the place where the body of our father Adam shall lay. And unto him of you who shall be left, O my sons, shall the word of God come. And when he goes out of this land, he shall take with him the body of our father Adam, and shall lay it in the middle of the earth, the place in which salvation shall be wrought. Then Noah said unto him, Who is he of us that shall be left? And Jared answered, Thou art he that shall be left. And thou shalt take the body of our father Adam from the cave, and place it with thee in the ark when the flood comes. And thy son Shem, who shall come out of thy loins, he it is who shall lay the body of our father Adam in the middle of the earth, in the place whence salvation shall come. Then Jared turned to his son Enoch, and said unto him, Thou my son, abide in this cave, and minister diligently before the body of our father Adam all the days of thy life, and feed thy people in righteousness and innocence. And Jared said no more. His hands were loosened, his eyes closed, and he entered into rest like his fathers. His death took place in the 360th year of Noah, and in the 989th year of his own life, on the 12th of taxes on a Friday. But as Jared died, tears streamed down his face by reason of his great sorrow for the children of Seth who had fallen in his days. Then Enoch, Methuselah, Lamech, and Noah, these 4, wept over him, embalmed him carefully, and then laid him in the cave of treasures. Then they rose and mourned for him 40 days. And when these days of mourning were ended, Enoch, Methuselah, Lamech, and Noah remained in sorrow of heart, because their father had departed from them, and they saw him no more. Chapter 22, 1-10. Only 3 righteous men left in the world, the evil conditions of men prior to the flood. But Enoch kept the commandment of Jared his father, and continued to minister in the cave. It is this Enoch to whom many wonders happened, and who also wrote a celebrated book, but those wonders may not be told in this place. Then after this, the children of Seth went astray and fell, they, their children, and their wives. And when Enoch, Methuselah, Lamech, and Noah saw them, their hearts suffered by reason of their fall into doubt full of unbelief. And they wept and sought of God mercy, to preserve them, and to bring them out of that wicked generation. Enoch continued in his ministry before the Lord 385 years, and at the end of that time he became aware through the grace of God, that God intended to remove him from the earth. He then said to his son, O my son, I know that God intends to bring the waters off the flood upon the earth, and to destroy our creation. And ye are the last rulers over this people on this mountain, for I know that not one will be left you to beget children on this holy mountain. Neither shall any one of you rule over the children of his people, neither shall any great company be left of you on this mountain. Enoch said also to them, Watch over your souls, and hold fast by your fear of God, and by your service of him, and worship him in upright faith, and serve him in righteousness, innocence and judgment, in repentance, and also in purity. When Enoch had ended his commandments to them, God transported him from that mountain to the land of life, to the mansions of the righteous and of the chosen, the abode of paradise of joy, in light that reaches up to heaven, light that is outside the light of this world. For it is the light of God that fills the whole world, but which no place can contain. Thus, because Enoch was in the light of God, he found himself out of the reach of death, until God would have him die. Altogether, not one of our fathers or of their children remained on that holy mountain, except those three, Methuselah, Lamech, and Noah, for all the rest went down from the mountain and fell into sin with the children of Cain. Therefore were they forbidden that mountain, and none remained on it but those 3 men.